Part 1, Chapter 1, Can We Make You Thin? I'd love to tell you that the National Health Service came banging on my door demanding my unique expertise. You're the only man for the job, they'd insist, refusing to take no for an answer. It's the kind of scene you'd see in a movie, but real life is rarely that glamorous. Instead, this journey began somewhere far less dramatic, a mundane trip to the supermarket. I was weaving through the aisles, clutching a basket filled with essentials, probably milk or bread, when I heard someone call my name. I turned to see a young woman I'd met during an NLP course a few months earlier. Tea breaks on that course had been filled with idle chat about work, the way these things always go. We exchanged pleasantries in the busy supermarket aisle, a polite "how are you?" followed by the obligatory "what have you been up to?" And just as we were about to part ways, she hesitated. Something had sparked in her mind. "Wait," she said, her eyes lighting up. "Maybe it's a good thing I bumped into you." "Oh," I said, intrigued. "You do that motivational stuff, don't you?" Motivational stuff. I smiled politely, though inwardly I winced. By motivational stuff, I assumed she meant the solution-focused brief therapy model I had spent far too long explaining during those course breaks. I'd probably bored her senseless with my stories of using the model to address problems like addiction, family breakdowns, and deep-seated fears. She was right that the solution-focused model worked very positively. That part at least seemed to have come across in my unequivocal faith in its success. Before I could correct her, she was full of enthusiasm for an ambitious new project she was setting up with the National Health Service. The idea was straightforward. What if a group of morbidly obese individuals were offered every conceivable intervention to tackle their weight loss over 12 weeks? She'd gathered a dozen volunteers, all clinically or morbidly obese, meaning their weight posed a direct threat to their lives, to join her 12-week program. Dietitians would handle food, fitness instructors would manage exercise, and medical professionals would oversee health. "Sounds incredible," I said, still unclear why she was telling me this. She grinned. "We just need one more person on the team. A Mr. Motivator." For those under 30, you might need to Google Mr. Motivator. Let me reassure you for the rest of us, my wardrobe has no spandex. But standing there in the middle of a supermarket aisle, I found myself nodding along, drawn in by her enthusiasm. Before I realised it was me she was talking about, me as the one who could motivate these 12 men and women struggling with their weight to succeed. Like anyone faced with an immense task that they have little experience in and seemingly blatantly unqualified to perform, I paused and said, "Sounds exciting. Count me in." The words tumbling out before I fully understood what I was signing up for. And just like that, I was hired or volunteered. Either way, it was only later that I discovered they were planning to pay me. Once the initial excitement wore off, reality set in. I went home deep in thought, made a cup of tea with my newly acquired milk, and sat down to sketch out some notes. 12 weeks, 12 sessions of motivation, then nothing. I had no idea where I might start and how I might contribute value to this group. This may not be my thing. I could politely decline. It wouldn't be long before I realised my lack of experience and preconceptions about weight loss would be a massive advantage. What did she mean by Mr. Motivator? Was I supposed to shout slogans at people as they sweated through burpees, wave pom-poms and cheer them on as they push away dessert? The more I thought about it, the more absurd it seemed. And then there was this imposter syndrome. I wasn't a dietitian, fitness guru, or doctor. My expertise lies in helping people solve problems. Real, life-altering issues such as family breakdowns, addiction, trauma. But this This felt different. In honesty, I'd never really experienced weight problems in my personal life. As the project approached, the nightmares began. I dreamed I was standing on stage in a packed auditorium, my colleagues giving me encouraging nods while I stood utterly blank. There was no script, no plan, just a sea of expectant faces waiting for me to say something profound. The panic was building until I was telling a friend one day, and she asked me a simple question. What do you normally do when you work with clients? It was like a light bulb switching on. Suddenly, I saw that weight loss was a problem like any other. This wasn't different at all. This was just another problem. And problems I knew how to handle. Problems and working with people to solve them were front and centre of my world. All I needed to see was that weight loss was another problem people faced. On reflection, I started to see that no one else saw it that way, because when I looked around, I saw people focusing on the problem to the point of obsession, something we wouldn't dream of doing in any standard situation. In my work, I'd always focused on solutions. When a client approached me with an insurmountable issue, I didn't ask, what's wrong? Instead, I'd ask questions like, when does this problem bother you the least? Or what are people who don't have this problem doing differently? My whole approach was about looking forward, not back. And yet, the weight loss industry seemed to do the exact opposite. People were forced to focus on their failures, logging every calorie, documenting every slip, obsessing over the very thing they wanted to escape. I realised this was the first significant obstacle I would face. The traditional weight loss tools, diaries, calorie counters, scales, were fundamentally at odds with my approach. If anything, they were adding to the client's problems. Instead, I started to look at the people who didn't have the problem, the people I called the weightless. These weren't fitness fanatics or supermodels. They were ordinary people who maintained a healthy weight without obsessing over food. What habits did they have? What were they thinking? All my success with troubled individuals came from a shift in their internal framework, a combination of knowledge and practical tools. I worked with the client's mindset, focusing on a clear, imagined future and utilizing the strengths and resources they already had. My work would be carried out in a short time frame of around 6 sessions, often less. And the more I looked, the more I saw that this didn't resemble a traditional diet or weight loss regime. In fact, it was starting to look like the exact opposite. This was the breakthrough that I needed. The more I thought about it, the more precise the path became. Weight loss wasn't just about food or exercise, it was about the mind. I started scribbling notes furiously, ideas pouring out faster than I could write them down. I began to build a toolkit for the mind, a practical, mindset-based program that could work alongside any diet or fitness regime because the diet or regime was of little relevance. I envisioned something that would help participants shift their focus, break free from old habits, and start thinking differently about themselves and their weight. It wasn't about meal plans or calorie counters because they symbolized the problem and should be avoided. It was about freedom, about helping them see their potential and what they were truly capable of. But I knew the diet industry didn't see things like I did. There would be obstacles to overcome or work around. Obstacles. There would be resistance. The professionals on the team wouldn't play along with the quit your diet idea on a project funded by the National Health Service. We'd all be out on our ears when word got out that the dietitian had pulled back on strict plans and diaries. I'd be the first out the door. Instead, I pushed on and ignored the team's apparent contradictions. As it happens, no one noticed. There were no conflicts of interest or falling out, and the team worked well. One or two eyebrows from the client group might have been raised, but nothing was said. I'm free of that now, but some apparent obstacles to traditional regimes are worth noting. Obstacle 1. Defining success. The National Health Service had one clear metric for success: weight loss, pounds lost, kilograms shed. These numbers could be measured, graphed, and presented as evidence of the program's effectiveness. After all, this was a weight loss program, and they wanted concrete and tangible results. But to me, numbers couldn't and shouldn't define success alone. My research showed that rapid weight loss often leads to rapid weight gain. It's a cruel cycle that traps people in endless frustration and self-blame. Beyond that, I knew from experience with many human problems that success is deeply personal. I thought back to the young people I'd worked with in other areas of my career. For some, success wasn't about hitting the top grades or excelling in sports. It was simply about showing up. Spending a full day in a classroom was monumental for a teenager who'd been skipping school for years. That was their version of success, and it was worth celebrating. This program could define success in countless ways: feeling better in your body, moving more freely, and enjoying life without the constant shadow of guilt or shame. It wasn't about the number on the scale, but how the participants felt about themselves. Still, convincing others of this would be an uphill battle, so I didn't. The NHS wanted measurable results, and I couldn't blame them. They needed to justify the programme's expense, but I also knew we'd miss the bigger picture if we defined success too narrowly. Obstacle 2. Focusing on the problem. The second obstacle was perhaps the most fundamental. The tools traditionally used in weight loss programs were entirely at odds with my approach. Participants were expected to keep food diaries, track calories, and weigh themselves weekly. These well-meaning tools were staples of the industry, but to me, they represented the very problem we were trying to solve. They forced people to focus on their weight, the one thing they wanted to escape. It was like asking an alcoholic to document every drink or a smoker to count every cigarette. It kept them tethered to their struggles, reinforcing the idea that they failed every time they slipped. Instead of freeing them, these tools tightened the chains. In my work, I never asked clients to obsess over their problems. If someone came to me wanting to overcome a phobia, I didn't ask them to catalogue their fears. If someone wanted to quit smoking, I didn't have them measure the nicotine content of each cigarette. I always focused on the solution. When does this problem affect you the least? What's different when things go well? The same principle applies here. I wanted the group to shift their focus away from the problem, away from their weight, and towards the solution. I called this way of thinking living like the weightless, because the weightless had much to teach us. Look in any town square and you'll see them. They are ordinary people. The weightless weren't supermodels or fitness fanatics. They were ordinary people who maintain a healthy weight without obsessing over food. They didn't count calories, track their meals, or weigh themselves daily. And what's more, they had few actual weight goals. Like many clients, their hopes and desires were much less grand. They didn't expect a perfect life, just progress. Our social media can be a fascinating snapshot of what we're all about. The weightless didn't obsess over food or calories. Instead, they liked fishing, hiking, and playing with their kids without food dominating their thoughts. I wanted to cultivate that mindset in the group and during our time together. Obstacle 3. the failure of diets. The third obstacle was the hardest to navigate because it struck at the heart of the weight loss industry. Diets don't work. That's not just my opinion. It's backed by research. Studies have shown that dieting is a predictor of future weight gain. The more someone diets, the more likely they will become heavier in the long run. It's a vicious cycle that leaves people blaming themselves when the real problem is the system they've been trapped in. But here's the paradox. Every diet has its success stories. Every diet has someone who swears by it and holds up their before and after photos to prove it works. If they fail, it creates the illusion that the diet is the solution and the individual is the problem. The truth is that diets are designed to fail. They create temporary change but offer no lasting freedom. They rely on restriction, which inevitably leads to rebellion. I'd seen this pattern play out repeatedly, and I knew we had to break away from it if we wanted real change. Obstacle 4. What to do instead. When I developed the idea of quitting diets and getting on with life, there was a noticeable gap to fill. What should I do instead? People who fight against their weight can often do so for decades and become embedded in the diet mindset. It's scary to drop all that and go alone. This is not the case since I left the project and developed this program. In it, I wanted to provide the information required and the tools to make it a success. These clashes weren't easy to overcome. I knew I couldn't completely dismantle the traditional methods my colleagues relied on, nor could I ignore the pressure to deliver measurable results. But I also knew that if I didn't challenge these ideas, we'd be doing a disservice to the people we were trying to help. So I focused on what I could control, building a program that worked from the inside out. It was not another weight loss plan tethered to food diaries, calorie counters, or rigid rules, but a program that would empower participants to reframe their thinking, rebuild their confidence, and focus on living the life they truly wanted. And that's how Quit Your Diet, Think to Shrink was born. This isn't a book about dieting. It's not about guilt, restriction, or obsessing over every bite of food. It's about freedom, the freedom to break away from the exhausting cycle of diets and finally take control of your life. It's about helping you quit your diet forever and replace it with a mindset that leads to lasting change. Over the next 14 days, I'll guide you through a process that will challenge what you've been taught about weight loss. Together, we'll let go of the tools and beliefs that have held you back, and you'll embrace a new way of thinking, one rooted in empowerment and possibility. This approach worked for me and the group I work with on this revolutionary project, and I hope it will work for you too. By the end of these 14 days, you won't be just free from dieting. You'll be free to live a life that feels full, joyful, and in control. You'll understand how your mind works and how to align it with your goals. And perhaps most importantly, you'll have a sense of clarity and confidence that no diet plan could ever give you. This journey isn't about perfection. It's about progress. It's about learning, growing, and reclaiming your power, one small step at a time.